Are you ready?
7 o'clock, TBS Yankees are on.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'll try.
Good evening. My name is Helen Anthony. I'm the chair of the Committee on Finance. I'm calling to order a regular meeting Tuesday, April 1st at 5:32 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please read the rules?
Chairwoman Anthony,
Present.
Vice Chairman Taylor,
Here.
Councilor Angelwash. Here. Councilwoman Graves is absent, Councilor Sanchez.
Present.
We have 4 present and 1 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, and I'd like to thank Ken Cheverini from this legal team that's here this evening, and of course, our wonderful correspondent Marissa. Thank you so much. With that, if you would please read item number 1.
Resolution authorizing approval of the following change order number 1, contract awarded by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21 through 26 B4 of the Code of Ordinances, Pool Design Group LLC, $210,366.58. Department of Planning and Development.
Thank you, Director Mulligan, for coming this evening. We'll swear the two of you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear on the penalty of perjury? The testimony you're about to give is the truth and the truth and nothing but the truth. Please state your names.
Joe Mulligan, Ian Collins.
Thank you so much for coming this evening. I think it was the magnitude of the change order for 210,000, given the original contract amount. We asked you if you would mind coming in and telling us what is going on with the South Water Street pipeline project.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. This is a desire to expedite and advance the design for the South Water Street multimodal pedestrian bike path. This will give us the advantage of forwarding work that would normally occur later in the contract by allowing the consultants to bring in a survey team that will imply the costs associated with the length and the extent of the survey that has to occur. And will also include utility location and subsurface utilities, which is a very important in order for us to avoid future unanticipated change orders. So really what this is it was part of the project scope that we want to bring to the beginning of the project so that we can get this past us. Part of the reason for the timing is because of the source of funding, which is federal dollars. It required us to do an extended environmental review, a NEPA process, NEPA, which we are actually coming through on the positive side of. It is based upon the environmental impact for this project in relationship to open space, the natural environment, and the proximity to the river. So by doing this, we would be able to achieve advance the project to a sufficient level that we may be able to commence construction activities prior to the end of the year. And that will be a great benefit for us to get this project resolved, hopefully by the end of next year.
Is part of your concern that we need to get the funds committed by a certain date, or?
Part of it is so that this scope of work, including getting a NEPA review, allows us to amend the contract application, which is a benchmark that we have to achieve, so that we can apply for approval for the next phase of scope, including drawing down that money to ensure that we have it to allow the project to move forward and not be halted due to some vagaries on commitment on a couple of rounds.
Okay. All right, and then you say it's going to be, you're trying to commence the work by the end of this year?
Correct.
Not sooner.
That's a pretty wide range of time.
Okay.
But again, we're at the mercy of kind of federal oversight.
Okay,
And so, as much as I'd like to make a more resolute determination as to our schedule, there's multiple variables that are outside our control that we want to be cautious on what we establish for expectations of the community for the progress.
and then if you did start at the end of the year, when did you anticipate completion?
Likely substantially completed the summer of next year.
Committee members. Yes, Councilmember Ball.
Thank you both for being here. So just I have a couple questions. One is, so this went from a total project cost of about $750 now to $1 million to change the bike lane on South Water Street. So the total is about $1 million.
Well, the overall project budget for the Safe Streets for All grant is $27.2 million.
So for this project, for the change order, this project is now $1 million?
Yes, this also includes some other work to do other parts of the project, including Broadway. The Washington secondary connection as well.
Okay.
So that was all included in the one contract, Southwood was just a section of that.
Okay, so in that 1 million that we see on page 34, that includes those other projects too, or the 1 million is just South Water?
Includes the other projects.
And is that
Yes,
right?
please.
And so is the 210 or so, is that because we're trying to expedite, or like what is the 210? Like why is it?
No, we actually got some value for this, which is unanticipated, but we got a good price, and that's just the extent of because of the length and the extent and the uncertainty and the amount of investigations that will occur. That's kind of the going rate for survey work for pre-construction activities.
I guess I don't totally understand what you're saying, is that, so why is this an additional 210 then, if that's the going rate, and wouldn't that be surveying, sorry, I can't see, you can't say. Wouldn't that, sorry, I felt like I was overly idiot. No, sorry, I'm still your bad. Sorry, Ken.
Both have big heads.
I got a good head. Wouldn't the survey work have been included in the initial 750? Like, what's the change, like, what is the 200?
So the 750 was to just get to the 30% preliminary design, and then we'll have another contract to do the rest of the work to final design and construction. So normally we would include this work in the second contract, which is going to be for to be determined amount.
Okay.
But we're trying to include it in this contract so we can get the work started earlier, since it takes a lot of time on the overall project.
Okay, so this was always part of it.
The change order is, I think, a procedural thing, so it's not an unexpected expense. It's the methodology in which you draw down on the existing contract. It's nomenclature.
And then I guess, it's okay. if I ask
Yes,
this?
please.
So if this is a Safe Streets for All grant, are we fronting the money and then getting reimbursed by the federal government? And what's our level of concern about not being reimbursed at this point? Because my understanding is some of these programs are just like not at all interested in multimodal anymore, which is breaks my little heart. So this isn't me saying I don't want us to do multimodal. This is me saying I'm worried we won't do that.
Yes, we are fronting the money and then being reimbursed. They have been paying their bills so far. Have been reimbursed for fees invoices since the new administration change. But we're still waiting to hear, so.
But we haven't received any like stop work orders on this or like any communication.
Yeah, no, it's an executed contract, so we're operating on the premise that will be held firm, but the benefit of the incremental kind of approval process that it gives us the ability not to get too far ahead of our skis, if you will, and be able to manage those and control those costs going forward.
And what part of this, sorry to like hunker in on the bike lane, which you probably want to do. What part of this is the South Water bike lane? Because I think when that idea was sold to us, or like was trying to be sold to us a couple of, like last year, the total price tag was $750. And so I guess my little like nervousness here, I'm hearing that it's like there's a bunch of stuff built in, but like, do we have, I don't see it, but maybe it's here. The different projects and how much each of the different projects cost underneath here, like what the total for each of those separate projects are. I would feel more comfortable voting yes on this if I knew like what piece each part was.
So we have 7 million total plus 7 million in city matching. The construction estimate currently for South Water is 4.5 million. Of those total funds. So it's-
4.5.
In this process, to this benchmark, then requires you to do a contract amendment.
Yes,
And then look at subsequent phases, so if it were previous numbers, it would have been up to a certain benchmark, but the total project cost is not there.
and when we put in the Safe Streets for All, right, sorry, I have no questions on this, but Safe Streets for All is really important to me. What was in the original proposal, and because 4.5 is a larger number than I think we've heard before for this part of it, at least a larger number than I've heard before, what has had to shift and get kicked out of the project? To make space for 4.5 of it being self-water.
Well, we're still very preliminary, like we're in the early design stages, but so far from the estimates, we're able to include all the important sections of the project. With the funding we have now and some additional state funding from REDAP. So we have Broadway included, Memorial Square, South Water, and then the Washington secondary connection.
Okay, what were the unimportant things that got kicked out? Like, if all the important stuff is in there, what were the medium level things that got eliminated?
Still to be determined, but there could be more work to put in a more permanent infrastructure for the existing bike lanes and upgrading those. And work on the Broad Street as well. But we're hoping we'll be able to get that to the scope stuff.
I think the hard part for us is. I think I understand what you're saying, that some of this funding is not just for the South Water Street, but we were told that figure for. Constructing is 750, as I recall, and so we're trying to reconcile. What,
4.5
4.5 to 750, I'm just confused, so the testimony tonight is confusing for us because I believe it was going to be 750 for the moving of the bike lane, is that not the case?
I don't know where that number came from, $750,000 doesn't get you a lot in civil engineering world.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure what the origin of that, it might have been for an amount to modify the existing somehow, but this project, based on that total project cost and the total budget, you know, 750 with, landscaping budget.
Okay.
can you ask Aaron a question?
Yes. Yeah.
You never, like last year, when we negotiated, wasn't 750 number, did you have that something?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the numbers. Well, I can't see your chart right now, but that would be.
I'm sorry, Courtney, I mean.
Chief Operating-
Chief Operating Officer, can you help us
Courtney
with
is
this?
coming.
I'm so sorry.
You swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth.
Yeah.
And please state your name.
Courtney Hawkins, I mean, we'll have to come back to this, it might be that 750 was the match. Because Joe is right, like, this is a full shared use path where the bike lane gets moved over.
It's like a whole mile.
It's a whole thing, and so I think that two things have happened since the initial conversation. One is that the initial conversation is what would it just take to cost to take it out. But also the design has shifted to be something much more substantial, which includes. You know, new infrastructure, new like sewer, all like a bunch more engineering.
It includes ADA compliance, so we'll do crosswalks, raised crosswalks. Stormwater drainage, relocation, new grant curbing, new sidewalk level, new travel surface, additional landscaping. It's really, in the accommodation for the additional travel lane and maintaining service parking along the length of it. So this is really kind of the, I won't say it's a premium thing, but it is an all-in investment in that area. More so than I think what folks are familiar with bike lanes now. This would be more of an esplanade, a riverside esplanade, open public space to accommodate multiple types of activities, and it will be significant permanent piece of infrastructure, more so than what we see in these, plastic demarcations that are identifying bike lanes. So this is a very different approach to, mobility and circulation in open space in this area.
Yes.
Do we have that, maybe we have that design, or the photos of what it could look like? I think I would just feel more, since this has so much visibility, not having a really good sense of like what we're talking about, I just don't feel super comfortable. I don't know. I'm feeling, something voting yes on this tonight, there, yeah.
We are also preparing, more graphics to
Okay.
assist with that. So right now, what you may have is a two-dimensional,
Yeah,
drawing. Oh, that's mobile.
yeah, okay, so we only have old drawings, okay.
In that, we'll have some imagery that will provide much greater clarification for what the fit proposal will be. That's, part of the scope. Again, we're at 30% right now, but the difference between 30 and 100% will be accelerated because most of the hard work has been done now. And this survey will be to identify any potential unforeseen conditions, subsurface utility issues. So, but once we get going, we don't want to encounter anything that we didn't expect to be there. We also have to relocate some of those appurtenances and infrastructure elements. So, and again, this was always part of the project scope. The change order is a mechanism to draw down that money sooner than later, to have it so that we can commission the consultants to proceed with their work. But we're happy to come back and show in greater detail, maybe in some other forum. In its time, a lot of this has been developing these concepts, and now that they are fixed and set, it's time, and I'm not sure we'll get to a public meeting schedule, but we are preparing that on throughout the communities to begin to reintroduce the project to the neighborhood and to the users, and we'll have greater graphic assemblies for that, including a rendering, which will give some clarity to that.
Yes, yes, Counselor Sanders.
Thank you, Director Ian. Yeah, I mean, I definitely share a lot of similar concerns that my colleague has shared. Two things, I guess, come to mind. The first one is regarding the federal grant. I was under the impression that money was not coming towards us. That's incorrect. It's for sure coming our direction, the $27 million.
It's committed, and the cash flow and reimbursements have been satisfactory to this point.
As of recently, you only get this money in phases. Every time they're gonna give you a new phase, they give you a new amendment, so they, in the past 2 weeks, gave us a new amendment, which is a good sign that they intend to.
So how much have we received up to this point of that 27? I don't know. That's probably not fair for you. Is that finance?
We have $720,000 obligated, it's available, and we built about 200,000 grant so far.
So we've spent around 200,000. So we have another 500,000 available right now of that.
Yeah.
Just worst case scenario, what happens, we don't get reimbursed? Where's that money come from?
You would only spend something that we have an executed contract with the federal government for. And I think consistent with what you're seeing everywhere, like if the federal government tries to pull back something that has been executed, then we would probably be in litigation with them for, not fulfilling their contractual obligation. So this is true for like all of our federal contracts. That's like the rule of thumb. They don't, there's lots of things that they're talking about not executed, but once you get the signature on the contract, especially if it's a recent signature from a member of this administration, we are taking that as a sign that we can move forward.
What is I mean, I really wish that Councilman Gunn was here. 'cause I mean, this is, I mean, I'm sure he's kind of up to date on what's been happening, but I mean, I'm completely out of the loop, if I'm being honest, and just seeing, the price, of this project, even though it's federal money, I think, I think it's completely irresponsible to spend this much of a grant, to redo, a structure that, in my opinion, I mean, it's kind of fine as it is, obviously, it could always be better, everything could always be better, but in the current circumstances of, city's finances, the pressure that a lot of our residents, are feeling right now, to see this much money being spent on a project like this, for me, it's just kind of hard to swallow and speak to my constituents,
To that point,
if I'm being honest.
you know, I think you could appreciate if you ever went down and these pedestrian bridge.
I love the pedestrian bridge,
It
too.
is, it's become a draw for the greater community, and you'll be down there, you see families around, it's a free night out, free experience, and in a colonial city with very limited. Public open space in the grand scheme of things, you know, there's not the Olmsted treatment in the city, there's, you know, we have our parks and, but for grand public open spaces. What this will allow us to do is to really accommodate all types of travel and lingering and strolling. It's improved circulation, we're gonna make, right now, many of those intersections are not ADA compliant, so we're deficient in our accommodation for the disabled. Part of the scope is also to include raised crosswalks so that we do speed control for vehicles on South Water, which can be problematic at times. We want to enhance the landscaping. We want to create a broader space for people to convene from all across the city. In a place that I think Providence deserves. So as well as it being a challenging time financially, I think to stop and be idle and not continue to advocate for improvements, particularly from monies that ostensibly have been committed. The most prudent thing to do, because I don't see prices decreasing in the future. The best time to build is today. The costs are only going to go up in our time. And this is a rare opportunity to seize the moment from a lot of funding from elsewhere to do a significant permanent improvement to the city that will benefit all citizens.
And again, more of this grant is going to only those square, like Broadway, so all of this will hold up.
And the Oldie project is more than likely, it is unpacking a conundrum of confusing and conflicting circulation. We're going to be redoing the roadways. So it'll be a curb to curb project that will, we hope, unlock the potential for Oldie for the future for much more dynamic ways than the way it's organized today.
I can add that we do have description of services disordered, and make sure that we see exactly what the areas are. So it is not South Water, it's 0.47 miles. The other projects are. Some of them, the Broadway, Green Street to Valley Street is 1.2. So thank you. I appreciate the fact that we're not just looking at this money for South Water. But continue, Councilor Sanchez.
What's that?
Okay. I'd like to thank Councilor Waters for joining us. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
One other question I have is that right?
Yes, please.
I guess the question I'm having is like. If, because it sounds like also like the exhibits we have are old, like these aren't current maps, and it's only the South Water and none of the other parts of it. If we continue this to next week, could we get more up-to-date information, and would that, what would that do to the project timeline with that? Do you have more documents? Sure.
This is, we have different graphics that might be more legible. This is an accurate rendered engineering drawing. You know, it is in a visual language, I guess that's.
Do you have, what do you have in Broadway?
Yeah, it was only South Water Street, which I think is why I was so focused on thinking this was only about South Water Street, because our graphics are South Water Street.
Yeah, and again, some of most of these designs are 30%, so they are preliminary. And this is kind of the level of detail that you'd expect at this.
But do we have this level of detail for any of the other streets?
No,
This,
and like Broadway hasn't been, in a community meeting yet, so I don't think it would be appropriate. Yeah, they actually.
So that's why we don't have it, is that they don't exist, and that's part of the process, not that they exist and we haven't been given that state information.
Correct.
So if we did continue this, there wouldn't be anything that you can show us next week either.
we could show you drawings, for South Water that might be more, comprehensible visually, maybe, if in a non-technical way.
All right, so, thank you very much. I think we, have to decide what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, is there a motion or is there?
Well, I'd make a motion to approve, it doesn't sound like we're gonna get any more drawings, Broadway at that until they actually, I mean, we come back next week, we're gonna hear anything different. I've seen anything different, it's like a Broadway, nothing like Broadway or only Broadway.
Have this discussion unless there's a second.
For discussion. Is the 200 that we'd be approving gonna help get us to where we get more information and you could provide that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
In the coming, okay, that's fine.
Is there a second? Thinking they're going to continue. If there's no second, is there another motion?
I've, motion to continue. I would just like to have a conversation with Councilman Gogs and probably like people from like State Street Coalition, just so that they're on board with the price point for the total project.
Okay. Will a week's delay, do you think we can do that in a week?
Yeah, 2 hours.
If I could just clarify, like this scope of work is the scope of work that's been submitted to the federal government. So if we're gonna go back to the government and say like, no, we're not doing this, it's going to put the whole grant. We're gonna have to renegotiate the scope of work on this grant again. So I just want to be careful when we're presenting it to people. As it relates to options, that decisions made are gonna affect the ability to execute on the entirety of the project. So I would hope that people that you talk to feel like they've been brought along in the design, because the team's done a lot of work and nothing is a surprise, so hopefully that's what gets reflected. But I don't want, if folks are like, oh, I'd like to
Yeah.
change it now, there are bureaucratic implications for those changes.
Okay. Thank you. So there was no second. Is there another motion?
I think.
Oh, the motion to continue was
I'll
made.
second.
Was made by Councilor Sanchez, seconded by Councilor Anderson, all in favor, all opposed.
Man,
Three ayes, 1 nay, and we're gonna continue. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. All right, Madam Clerk, please read item number 30.
Resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contracts and Supply in accordance with section 21 through 26 B1 and 2 of the Code of Ordinances, Federal Hill Commercial Association, $750,000, Department of Planning and Development.
All right, Chief, I think we have you on this, you to present on this, so please proceed.
So this is a state Rhode Island Commerce grant that came to the city for this purpose. The state intends to allocate $1 million and they're doing it in 2 different grant cycles. So this first grant was for $750,000. That gets granted to Federal Commerce. They have a contract for the work and will provide us all the documentation for how the money is spent, to be able to, access all of the money.
And so do we have, I'm sorry, it's going through, do we have a document, what page? 59. 59. Sorry.
No things. Big packet.
And so I'm sorry, do we know at all what they're going to be spending the money on?
They're replacing, the. And like they're fixing up the lights on the apples.
In many instances, they're actually replacing the decorative fixtures there, the bases are corroded. They're vintage that do not satisfy couple requirements. They have some modified poles there that support a catenary, which is a light that goes across the street. And I don't think they were ever engineered, if you will, and could potentially create a public safety hazard. So the new poles will be engineered properly and modified in order to accommodate the loads associated with the modification that's occurred. The poles are vintage, in which we probably see this when we're walking around in some of our decorative poles where the bases are cracked or broken. In many instances, those parts are no longer available or cost prohibitive, and so the decision was made in many instances to do some full replacements as well as improvements, repairs, and modifications to existing.
Okay. And so this is, as you said, I think as the chief said, this is part of a grant.
We
For
can
the
apply
city.
for the purpose of this.
Of this
on
particular
behalf of
project.
federal government.
Oh, okay.
And there will be another grant of $250,000 in the next round of Main Street grants.
I'm sorry, then who will that go to the next?
Also to the city to go to federal commerce. The state commerce department only grants to cities for this purpose, so we have to apply on their behalf, which we did in this circumstance.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Yes, Councilor Sampson.
Thank you, guys. Who initiated like this proposal? Was it the city or the Federal Hill Commerce Association come to you? I asked because I'm like, can other commerce
Yeah,
associations come to city?
We've
that-
submitted, we've gotten Main Street grants for, DPN is doing some wayfinding. We have a project in Wayland Square, so yes, other groups, when they do these call for proposals, can, partner with us for this. This was one that, both the state and the city had an interest in. So it was one of a few that was.
Any other questions? Okay,
Make a motion to approve number 2.
okay, motion to approve made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all of this. Madam Clerk, please read item number 3.
Resolution authorizing approval of the following contract award by the Board of Contracting Supply in accordance with section 21 to 26 B2 of the Code of Ordinances, Safety Markings LLC, $100,966.53, Department of Public Works.
Nice to see everyone. We'll swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. You swear to the perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but. I do, and please state your name. Crystal Lundberg, Deputy Finance Director and Budget Officer.
Bridget Point, Director of Providence DPW.
Peter, so, condition engineer, traffic engineering.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. I know this is asking a lot for you to do. If you guys are busy. Anyway, if you can tell us a little bit about the safety markings.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is a resolution related to payment to a vendor for safety markings done citywide. A list of projects was provided to the vendor with a copy of the purchase order. There was miscommunication internally at DPW about what was left on the purchase order when that communication went to the vendor, and so there was a confusion, frankly, over what they had to work with to complete the number of projects on the list, and they went over the amount of the purchase order. And so this is a request to be able to pay. This is work that's already been done, so it's a request to be able to pay the vendor for the work that they've done.
Thank you. I did not understand that, so I appreciate that. Can you just tell me the safety marking? So what was the total budget? maybe,
So the total budget was about $100,000 in the operating budget. However, the primary funding source for a lot of our line stripping is the school safety, and traffic calming fund. And so, there was approximately $56,000 allocated out of that fund to go towards the, traffic markings in fiscal year 2024. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most of this work was done in fiscal year 2024.
Oh, wow.
So this is a very delinquent period at this point.
okay. All right. Questions? Yes, Counselor Ingerbach.
This only question I have is like, what have we done to make sure that we don't do this mistake again, like promising to pay something we don't? Because obviously love traffic safety marketing is a big fan and also not doing this kind of mistake again.
So this scenario was definitely highlighted for us, the need for us to tighten up some processes internally to make sure it doesn't happen again. The communication not only with the vendor and the expectations of the vendor is something that we need to improve upon and have a plan in place to start that. I'm gonna be working with, I've already reached out to finance, gonna be working with purchasing and probably legal on making sure that, you know, when we have a vendor, when we work like this, that we're all on the same page with what the expectations are and what the limits of the PO are. So that everyone knows, everyone's dealing with the same information. It wasn't nefarious on anyone's part. It was really just kind of like a failure process.
Yeah.
Or glitch in the process that kind of allowed work to be done that went beyond the end.
Yes, please.
Have we ever thought about, like, for things like this, for safety markings, like bringing some of that internally, like what would be the cost benefit of like, it's like, because this is a large amount of money, like. And I assume some of this is for their time, but it does look like a lot of it is for physical materials, but like, if we had an extra DPW staffer. Who would paint lines or doing this other stuff with epoxy.
I think that would be challenging. I can see Nate bouncing out of his seat.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the past, they've done paint is kind of temporary.
Yeah.
A manual machine, to do a lot of the striping that we do, that's more permanent, it's epoxy resin that lasts. Months, years, that'd be a pretty big investment. Talk about huge trucks. And
Okay, so the
pretty
special
big
materials.
operations, so, So, you know, I mean, if there was. In an emergency situation, you need to stripe something with paint that doesn't last more than a few months.
Yeah.
You could, you know,
No,
that could be considered.
I'll also say that, like, in addition to this, it's also dangerous work, so I think the liability for the city to be putting people, like our staff, on this type of equipment. Is could be a financial risk for us at this point, we may be better off allowing the vendor to assume the liability of their employees and their safety. Since this would be kind of a really unique type of work, so should we pursue that?
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions?
The motion to approve number 3.
Motion to approve, moved by Counselor Taylor, seconded by Counselor Vanderbilt, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Madam Clerk, please read item number 4.
Resolution authorizing approval of the following option year 1 contract award by the Board of Contract and Supply in accordance with section 21 through 26 B5 of the Code of Ordinances. K5 Corporation of Safety Marketing LLC, $200,000. Department of Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is just an approval for us to extend the contract to utilize the option year for K5 Corporation and Safety Marketing, that's the two vendors under that we can fund $200,000. And we want to know more about what these actual projects are. That's going to elaborate, but it's basically just for us to extend an existing agreement.
I would love to know what they are. If you wouldn't mind telling us.
Well, the project varies inside from crosswalk to striping an entire road, so they vary. You do have a current list, that list will be paid them. Where you've extended it, a lot of that wasn't completed, so I think. we'll present the uncompleted work on that list plus a few other projects. You know, a lot of times we develop a plan at least a couple times a year based on requests, based on what areas that we previously did and field reviews. We also take into account areas that aren't gonna be worked on, streets, there's a big amount of, maybe a third of the city that has current project. So we stay away from those. Obviously, we'll, you know, strike something that gets disturbed, and then we put a plan together based on it. You know,
Well, I'd like to thank you because you've been very responsive in my board, so I do appreciate that. Any other questions regarding? Okay.
Make a motion to approve number 4.
Motion made by Councilor Kelly, seconded by Councilor Law, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. Well, thank you so much for coming, we really appreciate it. Okay. Zipping right along, and please read item number 5.
Communication from His Honor the Mayor dated February 19th, 2025, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to section 302B and 1013 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45 through 15, sections 1 through 31, passed in 1987. He is this day appointing Rachel Dotson of 230 Powell Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 22905, as a real estate development or finance category member of the City Plan Commission for a term to expire on January 31st, 2030, and respectfully submit the same for your approval. Ms. Dawson replaces Mr. Sherry, whose term expired on January 31st, 2025.
Ms. Dodson, if you wouldn't mind joining us at the end of the table. Thank you so much. We're gonna swear you in. Please raise your right hand.
You swear to kind of be perjury that testimony you about the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes, ma'am. And please state your name. Rachel Dawson.
Thank you so much for coming. And congratulations on your nomination, basically, for the City Plan Commission. It's a big job. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit about your background and then why it is you want to serve in the CPC.
Absolutely. I am a transplant in Rhode Island from the Pacific Northwest, where I grew up. I've been in Providence since 2013 and involved in the real estate community here since 2014. In the Northwest, I had an arts and teaching background. Here I got into real estate, and I think being involved in that industry became this kind of immediate immersion course into learning about neighborhoods and what kind of makes Rhode Islanders tick and all of the positive and beautiful things that we have here. I think the city is really amazing, and it's been great to be a part of it.
Thank you. And I see you have, it's very nice to see someone from a different part of the country coming into our area and also be interested in serving in this way.
Yeah, I think because of what I do, I'm in contact on a daily basis with people coming here from other places who had different experiences, maybe time in their own civic communities, and they've got big ideas, and I think it's nice to kind of hear some sharing or concepts coming from my client base, but also having a good understanding, been here long enough to know how things operate, what goals are specific to Providence, and how I think we can really hold a mirror up to some concepts that come from other places, but also really digging into authentic Providence needs and plans for the future.
Wonderful. I'm going to open it up. I have some more questions myself, but any questions or comments from our members of the committee? Yes, Councilor Randall.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your interest in surveying. And I love your arts background too. That'll be a fun addition. I guess the only question I have left is, so we just did the update to our comprehensive plan, which then the CPC is obviously intricately involved in helping implement. Were you involved in that process at all, or did you participate in any of the outreach or any of those?
Just on like a citizenry level, I was following what was happening with the meetings, oftentimes going through transcripts, but no, I wasn't part of the committee at that time. So.
But you like went to some of the committee meetings or?
I think I did one that was online, also, we had someone come and speak at the office, so I'm familiar, I've also read the comprehensive plan, that's finished. So, yeah, it's exciting.
I guess I'm gonna, oh, anyone else? Yes, Councilor Sanchez,
There,
so sorry.
thank you, Chairwoman. Nice to meet you, Rachel. Do you have any like strong opinions on like what you would, or critiques of like the city when it comes to the way we do planning, or like, do you have any exciting ideas that you want to like present to the commission? Like,
I mean, I would be new to the planning commission, so I definitely have some learning to do. I'm full of strong opinions, but I think it's best to kind of approach the new comprehensive plan, which people put years into, with the mentality that, you know, this is the format moving forward, and I'm in this role to support it as best I can. If I have ideas or notions that come from my experience or places that I've lived, I'm happy to share them with that committee in the appropriate format.
so to be more specific, what do you think about like upzoning and parking minimums?
So, I come from the land of ADUs, right? So we've had tiny houses in backyards for decades in the Northwest. So I have a lot of experience with creating density where it doesn't exist. I do believe it's a positive and can really address the housing crisis that we have if it's done correctly without being a detriment to neighborhoods, especially historic neighborhoods. Do I wish there was more affordable housing in large scale projects? Absolutely. But I think that we have to also work with our development community about what makes sense, because I do believe development at the right scale and the right pacing is great for Providence. We need to be able to access it as much as possible.
Thank you.
So I'll just follow up, so you're coming at a time when the zoning ordinances are going to be, we just did our first, tranche.
Yeah.
Of the less controversial zoning ordinances, so the next job for CPC is going to be bringing forward the more controversial. Parts of our zoning ordinance, so my question to you is I, have appeared, quite a bit before the CPC. I'm also very, interested in whether and how you feel, about community input, and is that an important part of the process? Because
100%. I don't really think any city government should be making decisions wholeheartedly without at least touch point or beginning with input from their citizens and their builders. I think a lot of the art that I did in the Northwest was for commerce and economic departments of small cities and in the city of Seattle. And every public art project began with a community meeting. And our concepts were always expanded and improved upon when we had input and buy-in from the community.
I appreciate that, because I think it's something frankly that's lacking. At the CPC,
Yeah.
I think a lot of the decisions are not, doesn't seem to be apparently a lot of listening to the citizens most impacted.
Yeah, and I'm not in a position to make a judgment or say that I agree or disagree with that statement, but I think that it's any city's job to create access and understanding in their communities.
Wonderful. Yes, Councilor
Thank you,
Sanchez.
George. Just out of curiosity, what brought you to Rhode Island?
Yeah, well.
Almost like a decade in, but we're Rhode Islander at this point.
Well, let's go down the street, but I came for my now ex-husband's job, working on a wind farm project, and I like Rhode Island so much, I stayed. And I like to tell people I got 3,000 miles of clarity.
Beautifully put. All right. Yes, yes, of course, Councilor.
Thank you, Chair. Rachel, nice to meet you. I want to ask you, what do you think are like in your view, the top 3 reasons why maybe the average resident opposes development?
I think lack of understanding or experience is really at the root. Nobody likes change. I'm certainly sympathetic to the reluctance to change what we know and what seems to be working well. Again, I think the burden on any city organization is to communicate and over communicate. Because if we're all working towards the good of the people, that should be at the heart of the mission. Yeah, I also think that people might be afraid that change comes with a cost. Increased taxes, increased property values, you know, we live in a very, very expensive time. And if people are struggling to pay their bills, see things erected or built or changes made, if they don't have understanding of where those dollars are coming from, that can also be resistant. Yeah. And I'll just one more point, we have this like very beautiful, very strong, very unique culture here. And I don't think that should change, and I want to find ways to kind of celebrate it and lift it up while we're still creating a space that can hold a larger population.
All right. Motion approved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Enderbos, seconded by Counselor Taylor, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Rachel, thank you. And thank you for your willingness to serve. You're going to recommend that the council approve your appointment and at our next, not the next meeting, because I think at our second meeting in April.
April 17th, you're more than welcome to come.
Okay, no worries, I will continue to serve on our district commission and then we're gonna have the dive into committees until this change.
Wonderful. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I'd like first of all, I'd like a motion to waive the reading of item number 6.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Enderbos, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. This, I'm gonna ask for a motion to transmit without recommendation. This is an item, I believe, it's been lingering on our, yeah, that has been lingering on our list, and I really don't know why, we still have it, so we're just gonna, reseat it at the council floor. So I need a motion to transmit without the recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Right, motion made by Counselor Enderbos, seconded by Counselor Taylor, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed. And then, I am going to, we'll read item number 7.
An ordinance repealing ordinance chapter 2019-6, number 164, an ordinance establishing a tax stabilization agreement for 1290 Westminster Street, LLC, located at 1292 Westminster Street.
I guess there's no longer an interest, Aaron. Can you testify on this?
Yeah, I'll comment and say that we did move to repeal that ordinance earlier. We had been in contact with their council. There were certain provisions that we actually didn't follow to move forward with it. But since then, they have caught up and they paid their bills, so it's moved at this point.
Okay. May I have a motion to continue it indefinitely?
So, second.
Motion made by Counselor Taylor, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor? Aye. All opposed. Wonderful. Madam Clerk, item number 8.
An ordinance amending ordinance chapter 2024-1, number 1, the capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2024 through 2028.
And I'm asking for the same motion because we have, I'm sorry, Aaron, this is just an old item that's been hanging on me.
Yes, yeah, this was, as I remember, this was introduced by, Councilor Sanchez. And it was adding just different language within the, CIP ordinance to, require additional approval steps from the administration. But, we've since moved away from that. But what I will say is that, the administration will be submitting a new CIP budget during the budget address in a couple of weeks. There'll be another opportunity to enter that language that we had before.
And please remind me of the language.
It was language that, reiterated that, any of the items in the CIP that were approved, there couldn't really be any shifts in different projects or anything outside of express, approval from the council. Very much related to the bike lane issue from last year.
Okay, all right. that we would definitely be wanting to make sure that language is, used moving forward, but, we will ask to have a motion to continue this indefinitely.
Second.
All right, motion by Counselor Vanderbilt, seconded by Counselor Sanchez, all in favor? All opposed. With that,
Motion adjourned.
Second.
motion to adjourn made by Counselor Taylor, seconded by Counselor Vanderbilt, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed.
Yeah, half hour.
Yay.
Get out. Game starts at 7
Yeah.
with the torpedo guys.
Um,